Cool. Our next talk should also be awesome. Um, it is by Courtney, Cheating the System by Design for Epic Combos. Courtney has been in the game industry for over 20 years professionally, working in key programming and design roles on games such as Halo Wars, Age of Mythology, and Age of Empires, Orcs Must Die, Stranger Things 3 the game, and a lead designer for the AIAS 2013 Mobile Game of the Year Hero Academy. Since starting as a solo developer in 2014, Courtney has published the VR tower defense hit Evil Robot Traffic Jam, as well as the Rampart homage Sky Cannoneer. Courtney is currently working on a dream project with her roguelike space ARPG Reality Break, where she continues to emphasize visceral movement to movement fun, polished aesthetics, and long term depth and replayability. That is quite the CV, Courtney. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Sorry, yes, you are good to go. I'm excited
I'm
to hear
so
about
sorry.
this.
Awesome. Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Courtney, she, her, and yeah, I've been a game dev for kind of forever. And today I'm excited to talk about one of my favorite topics. It's the feeling while you're playing a game that you found a way to break its gameplay systems in a way that feels like cheating. Some of my favorite types of entertainment, including shows and movies, present experiences that surprise me by breaking their own implicit and explicit rules to ascend to heights I never expected. These aren't just things I didn't predict, these are things I didn't think possible. And I think that if developed well and executed well, this instills in me and others a sense of like delight and curiosity about how much farther it could go. So, what do I mean by that in the context of games? It's about giving players the ability to circumvent apparent rules in such a way that it feels like they're breaking out of the game's design. It's not literal cheating, where I edit a data file or save file or use an exploit that breaks the game. It's not about getting so powerful that you just overwhelm a difficult enemy. It's not about cheesing a system to make it irrelevant, like finding a spot on the battlefield where an enemy can't get to you, and that which collapses one of the system's pathfinding out of existence. No, what I mean is something that feels more or less like you're using some combination of the game's systems as intended to obtain what you perceive to be unintended benefits, as in unintended by the game's developer. This is a little thrilling, almost like something you want to keep a secret and get away with. It can make you feel very smart and can make you feel a sense of mastery over the game, which holds powerful appeal. Let's get into some practical examples, starting with the well-known trope of a stat called strength that affects your character's damage. Your damage scales predictably. Getting +1 to strength gives you +1 to damage. A simple on-ramp to making players feel like they're cheating the system is to allow them to change the equation, the conversion equation, via an upgrade that grants a 2x multiplier to stat conversions. +1 strength now converts into 2 damage. That's a fun, if straightforward, damage boost. But now imagine another upgrade that increases multiplier upgrades by +1. So even if you have 10 strength, if you get +1 to strength, you just get +1 damage. You went from 10 to 11, you have one more damage. But a +1 upgrade to the multiplier that controls the damage conversion will give +10 damage, skyrocketing the equation. This sort of indirection allows for a subtle but powerful combination of two independent concepts into something that feels a little unfair. Something like this has the potential to energize a player with the knowledge that when they see an item with stats on it, it could count for so much more. And they might even wonder, is there a way to change all multipliers to ×5, ×10? So this example illustrates the core idea of subverting player expectations in ways that surprise them with a game's hidden potential. as it unfolds. Because games come with sets of rules, many defined by genre tropes, franchise tropes, that create assumptions and expectations in a player's mind. Being able to change the equation that controls the damage conversion in an action RPG is not something players will generally assume to be possible, and the realization that it is might very well delight them. It will also instill in players a sense of wonder about other ways they might be able to make the game more their own. But even that is just the starting point, kind of a baseline. Let's step out of stat systems for a moment. Even though I could talk about stat systems for hours, and talk about other player expectations. Various games have special abilities with defined attributes, such as the damage radius for a whirlwind attack or an explosive fireball. Those abilities often have upgrades, including a larger range for that whirlwind or the blast radius of that fireball. Typically, these upgrades are quantized. A single upgrade that increases the radius by 20% or 50%, and then that's it. And the game will often have a custom piece of FX art, maybe a custom sound for the upgraded forms of these abilities. A larger spin slash, larger explosion. Our expectations are that this blast radius isn't something you can affect in too many other ways, if any. Art content is expensive, sounds are expensive after all. But what if you get an upgrade that says abilities gain a 2x multiplier to radius? Wait, does that mean the +1 multipliers upgrade we talked about before would apply here too? If we buff our multipliers enough, can one of these abilities grow big enough to blanket the entire screen? This possibility violates the expectation that art content variety is constrained in specific ways. Great examples of this include Hades and Vampire Survivors, which have multitudes of upgrades that scale their visual effects substantially. And by the way, yes, I did all this programmer art by myself, and yes, I am taking commissions for your own projects. So one of the most striking examples of subverting our assumptions comes from another fantastic roguelike, Monster Train. I remember a run where I gained some upgrades to increase the size of one of my minions by something like 3x. It gave that minion a massive stat boost and increased its visual scale to match. It was a fun moment, but it strained my minion budget. There's a floor budget, and you can only have so many minion points. So I couldn't place as many other minions if I deployed this one. This felt like an interesting, but really kind of a typical balancing trade-off. More power for more cost. However, I happened to log into another upgrade, one that could shrink one of my minions to the smallest that the game supports, without affecting its stats. This violated another core assumption, that my minion budget's interaction with the floor budget was fixed, that I would forever have to make a trade-off between minion quantity and having this bruiser on my team, giving players a way to ignore what appear to be important balancing points in a game is a fantastic way to make them feel they are cheating the designer's intent. There was a cherry on this cake too. As I progressed, I found multiple upgrades that allowed me to duplicate any minion of my choice. Without a second thought, I cloned this little guy again and again and again. You might note that this is a hidden multiplier upgrade within that game's design. I had already been breezing through most fights, so needless to say, I created easy mode and won that run. Not only that, but this run was many years ago, yet I remember it to this day. That, I feel, illustrates the power of letting players feel like they are somehow cheating. Of note, this type of experience has been so foundational for me that I made it the core hook of my upcoming game Reality Break, its rewrite mechanic. In the game, anytime you see a special lightning bolt next to a game element, it indicates that you can rewrite it, change it somehow, edit it somehow. This can happen to item stats in the beginning, such as power, that you can modify, but it expands dramatically. One early example comes up when you defeat larger ships in the game. These warships drop larger items that don't fit on your starfighter because they require a warship-sized equipment slot. Just total tropes all the way. However, when you inspect these items, there's a lightning bolt next to unequipable warship class. You can rewrite that requirement, changing it to the fighter ship class. The item visibly shrinks in your inventory to indicate that it has been miniaturized, its reality has been changed, and that you can now equip it. This goes against player expectation that equipping a large item first requires you to obtain a larger ship. And in fact, it has been an interesting issue with teaching players because even people who have played the game for a long time, they see the lightning bolt next to it and still don't realize that instead of getting a bigger ship to equip this item, they can just shrink it. That's how baked in that assumption is, and some work has to be done on communicating it even more clearly. At this point in the game, a player forms an expectation that item stats and item size are rewritable, and might wonder what other item properties can be edited. However, as you progress further, that lightning bolt begins appearing in brand new places. On mission time limits and region hazards, on pilot skill cooldowns and level caps, and even on treasure crates in space itself. Now, these ways of subverting player expectations would be intriguing to play with in almost any genre, I think. But roguelikes are particularly well suited to designs that enable and encourage cheating and breaking their systems. For one, if you create a combo that breaks the game's design intent, you only have until the end of that run to benefit from it. It won't trivialize the game forever. In addition, roguelikes mitigate one of the main risks of this concept, which is the risk to the flow state that we want players to experience. If allowed to persist for too long, breaking out of a game's design guardrails can lead to trivializing the game and to eventual boredom. But roguelikes encourage players to see their runs as transient, where it feels natural and often desirable to end a run and start over, something that an OP combo can speed up dramatically. This has an additional implication for the meta progression found in roguelites. The metagame unlocks should be doled out more judiciously and carefully, so that a permanently broken state doesn't get locked in. Or this power escalation could be incorporated into a game's design as one of the paths to victory. Fun side note, as I wrap up, I asked Alexi, one of this festival's organizers, if she could look over my draft of this talk. Among other things, she mentioned that she co-wrote a paper titled Understanding Systems Suspense that has substantial overlap with this talk. I greatly enjoyed reading it, and I recommend you check it out if you're interested in delving deeper into these topics. To sum up, if you think about the expectations players have coming into your game, your franchise, your genre, you can purposely twist them around so that they represent soft boundaries rather than hard walls. Fundamentally, games with many systems which can interact with each other will set themselves up for more satisfying and surprising balance breaks, and will in fact surprise even the developer with things they never intended, but which I, as a developer, am always thrilled to see players discover. Thank you very much, and thank you so much for inviting me to give a presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming, Courtney. That was really awesome. Yeah,
Thank
I
you so
know
much.
a couple of us in chat were talking about Diciomancer, which came out very recently, as like a cool example of being able to edit things that you wouldn't expect to.
I'm sorry, which one was that?
Diciomancer?
Oh, okay. I haven't played that one.
That's what I've been playing this weekend. I highly recommend it.
Awesome,
We
thanks.
did
I'll check it
have we had a question in chat from Too Much Abstraction, wondering if something is lost by specifically calling out the stuff you're allowed to edit, or what's the trade-off there?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I do think that there is an element that is definitely lost as far as you are expected in, especially in the roguelite genre, to you're expected to find the unexpected. So like people, play these games and we generate stories, or the games generate stories for us. It's in a sense like bringing some of those stories maybe to more people who don't play as much to look into those things, or who don't play as much to really understand how to like really exploit the game's systems to really find those things and let them happen, or play something for 100 hours to let it develop. So I think that there's a bit. I think it's a very good point, and I think there's a bit of a, like, off the top of my head, I feel like there is a bit of a trade-off there with kind of a pros and cons.
Absolutely. Were there any things in your game that you thought were too much to allow the player to alter, or is it just completely free reign?
Well, that's a great question. So I've been working on this game for a while. For I think this week will be the 5-year anniversary of my first Git check-in. So initially, it was just items and skills, I think. But then I kept thinking, like, wait, but what if there was a lightning bolt here? So far, I haven't really hit like this is too much, except in terms of implementation. Like some things I just start working, and I designed a generic system that could, in theory, like support any kind of rewritable. But sometimes something would just I would just go into it and think, okay, this is I'm a solo indie dev. What am I doing here? But some things I would say are easy to implement, like version 1, but then that shows me the potential of what this could be. So a great example of that is actually something that was in the presentation, but everyone here gets a sneak peek, is story fragments. Like when characters are talking to you, eventually you get powerful enough that a fragment of dialogue gets lit up and there's a lightning bolt next to it. And when you rewrite that, you get a dialogue that says, here's the sentence they say. And that changing that rewrites the reality. It ripples out what changes, right? And so that feels like as soon as I got that working, it kind of like shifted something in my head, but also it would have, to really run that all the way down, I think would take, it could potentially be its own game, honestly, but it would take a lot of effort to kind of figure out how to do this, where it's like conversation trees, except you're not choosing what you say, you're choosing what somebody else says. And also those like philosophical implications where, okay, I want a better item, I want an epic item, but am I really going to rewrite what this person said to me to, so like there's a lot of stuff that unlocked that was, I felt like was very surprising in many ways.
Fantastic. And I can totally see how there would be places where planning ahead would be really beneficial, but also you can't predict all of the things that are kind of come up. So I guess that's another check in the box of why prototyping is really awesome. Um, I can't imagine how huge it would get, the possibility space of being able to affect dialogue. I'm definitely going to check the game out after this.
Yes,
Thank
it
you so
would.
much, Courtney.
Awesome. Thank you so much.